Welcome, Carol. So we do have a definite quorum because we have six, and we are 11 seat committee with two vacancies right now. So we'll start with introductions, and I'll start. My name is George Tolumpsis. I'm the planning board rep to this committee. I'm the vice chair of this committee, and I have been delegated by the chair to facilitate these meetings. And I'll call people just to keep things flowing more easily. And Hannah, why don't you go next?
Yes, thank you, George. I'm Hannah Reckshoffen. I'm the chair of the committee and a committee member at large. And I'll pass to Tracy.
Hi, Tracy Allen. I'm committee member at large. Hello, Travis. I know you from another life. I used to work at the soil lab. He used to send me some samples to process. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So I'll stick with the committee here. How about Phil? You can introduce yourself.
Hi, Phil Elmer. I'm the city council rep.
Thank you. Carol?
Hi, I'm Carol Collins. I'm the Director of Energy and Sustainability for the city. And I just want to say, I don't know if it was covered already. I had a really tough time getting in. I had to use the calendar. So yes. I see there's other members who aren't here.
I just sent an email with the link to the calendar.
Okay. All right.
They are the same link. I swear.
Thank you, Carol. And Carol, you are the representative to this committee. You're
in the ordinance. I am the I think I'm the liaison or something to the mayor.
Okay, thanks. Nancy.
Nancy Hazard, member at large, and I'm also a member of Greenfield.
And again, if there's anything you do, it's from my hearing, it's quite low, Nancy. I'm sorry to hassle with that, but just want you to be heard. I think we have no other committee members yet, right? We're waiting on MJ, Marlo, and Jonah. So why don't we go to our two guests? Travis.
Hi, I'm Travis Drury. I'm here because I'm the chair of the Community Preservation Committee. I'm also the chair of the Conservation Commission. So some people like Nancy. I just saw Nancy at a meeting earlier this week.
Travis, your sound is also low for me anyway. So I don't know if anyone else was having that experience, but
they're both all right for me.
Okay, great. Yeah. Maybe it's just my end. Thomas.
I'm Tom Greeno. I am the vice chair of the committee, here only to back Travis up. I'm the housing authority director, and by virtue of that, I am the housing representative to the community preservation committee.
Great. Thank you. And I'll invite other committee members to introduce themselves when they come in.
Did we hear from Andy?
I assume Andy is a member of the public. Hey, Andy.
I'm a member of the public. Hi.
Yeah, we typically don't. I mean, if people want to say hi, that's great. It's wonderful to have members of the public here. We typically don't expect people to introduce themselves.
I'm curious about Susan. Is that Susan Wergaftig or somebody else?
And people aren't obliged to introduce themselves or identify themselves. And we have another committee member just joined. MJ, hello. If you could introduce yourself, that'd be great.
You're muted.
I can't hear you either, MJ.
Doesn't look muted, but can't hear
you. Maybe you need to go away.
The spirits are telling us to go to in-person meetings, I'm saying.
I know, right?
Andy was saying take out headphones. I'm not sure what that is. That a technique? No, can't.
You want to go away and try and come back in?
Terminal. I didn't know if you needed me for quorum.
Nope. Well, thank you. We don't, but glad to have you here.
All right, I'm on my way
Now
to
we can
Denver.
hear you.
Bye. Actually, I'll stay and listen, but I won't talk, okay?
I can hear you now.
Yeah.
Do you want to did you
That's
introduce yourself, MJ? I'm not sure. I couldn't tell.
MJ, did you hear the question? George wanted you to introduce yourself.
And your role on the committee. Thanks.
I'm MJ Adams, Director of Community and Economic Development, City of Greenfield.
Excellent.
Thank you. Okay, I think that's it for introductions. And the next agenda item is the approval of the April meeting minutes. Thank you, Hannah, for your efforts on that. It looks like you were almost trying to get it verbatim.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff in there. And I know it looks like a work in progress because there's some places where it says check video and correct something.
I'm telling you, I'm the last person you want to have do minutes.
So I'm happy to talk with you offline if you want some assistance working on that. But my recommendation would be we table these till next month and have them a little more fine tuned. If there's
I'm totally fine. I also never managed to teach myself to speed read either. Many people have tried to teach me how to do both of these things. My brain wants it all.
So if there's no objection from the committee, we'll go ahead and table those and bring them back next time. Great. Seeing no objection. And now we're on to the centerpiece of our meeting. We have both Travis and Thomas here from the Community Preservation Committee. And I think Travis, as chair of that committee, you're taking the lead. So take it away.
All right, thanks. Is my audio any better now?
It's great. Maybe I had my thing too low. You're
Okay,
fine.
well,
Thank you.
yeah, I switched to a different microphone, so
Okay.
hopefully that'll work. Yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. And are you seeing the PowerPoint full screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I did send you a copy of this. I modified it slightly, just some wording, but essentially this is an update on what we've been working on and why we exist. And this was made for a public hearing that we're going to be holding on July 28th. So if anyone comes to our public hearing, you'll get to see the same thing again. So I'll just dive right in. I'm going to skip that because that's for a public hearing. So Community Preservation Act, state law passed in the year 2000. Basically, it lets us raise funds for open space, historic preservation, housing, and recreation purposes. So Greenfield voted to adopt it in November 2020. And as a result, the Community Preservation Committee was formed. So basically the Community Preservation Act, the city gets money two ways. The first way is that Greenfield adopted a 1% property tax surcharge on residential and commercial property owners. There are exemptions for low-income households and the first $100,000 of residential and commercial property value too. And that 1%, I'll just add, is a number that can vary. The city can increase that number if, in the future, if we feel we want more money in the fund, depending on how it goes. And so fiscal year 2022, that was the first year that we raised funds into the CPA fund, $258,000. And that year, so then the second way that we get money is by a state match. And it's not 100% match. It's based on how much money the state has to allocate and how many towns have adopted the CPA. So it's usually, 20 to 40%, somewhere in that range. The first year we didn't get a match, so it was just the 258,000. This isn't in the presentation, but for the next fiscal year, the amount the city raised was a little bit lower, about 215,000. And with the expected match, it should be about 268,000 or something like that. So that would bring us up to a little over 500,000 at that point. With these funds, the Community Preservation Act requires that we put at least 10% into a fund for housing, at least 10% into a fund for open space and recreation, and at least 10% into a fund for historic preservation. The rest of it, we can either put it, put all of the rest of it in housing, or we can do what we did, which is basically we match this pie chart. We're also allowed putting up to 5% in an administrative fund. So this is basically what we did. We put 10% in the 3 required, 5% in administrative, and then the 65% is just in a flexible fund that can be used for anything. And we did that at least to start with because, we're not sure what kind of projects we're going to get, and that gives us the most flexibility. But this also ensures that each of these areas will have funding available to some degree. So our committee, it sounds like it's a lot like your committee. They're different required members and other people who are at large. So we have 2 at-large members appointed by the mayor, 2 at-large members appointed by the city council president, and then there's a conservation commission member. That's me on our commission, historical commission member, housing authority, which is Tom, planning board, and recreation commission are all represented. And that, that sort of gets to the overall areas of what the Community Preservation Act is about. So basically our responsibilities and what we've been working on is studying the community's preservation needs, possibilities, and resources, and developing a community preservation plan. And this plan is essentially what we feel is, is like the way that the funding would best benefit the city, I guess, would be a way to put it. And so then number 2, once we start reviewing projects, once we start, getting projects proposed to us, we'll be reviewing and recommending projects to city council for funding from the CPA fund. And then our third thing is just we're the record keepers of where this money is being spent and reporting on our budget. So again, a little more detail on the plan, which is essentially what we've been working on since we were formed. Basically, the purpose of the plan: establish criteria for evaluating applications for funding, establish processes and timelines and reviewing applications. And then this is the part I was getting at, is informing applicants and the public of the CPC's goals as it relates to the different areas that can be funded, and providing city council with background information to review our recommendations and articulate a common understanding of the community's needs and priorities. And so this is why we're having a public hearing. We're required to have 1 public hearing each year. And this year, our public hearing is going to be getting feedback from the public on our plan. And because, the 9 of us are not, a complete, an accurate sample of everyone in Greenfield. So we want to get everyone else's input and make sure that the plan meets the needs of the public the way that we think it does. So then we'll be reviewing the plan after that. And this chart is like the holy grail for our committee when trying to decide what projects can and can't be funded with community preservation funds. So these are the 4 areas: open space, historic, recreation, and housing. And then you can see there, can you, acquire land for open space? Yes. Can you rehabilitate land for open space? No. So you can go through this chart, and there's a lot of nitty gritty details about, what exactly does preserve mean versus support, or, and luckily there's some guidance out there on that, but this is like what we point people towards, and this is what we have, to look at ourselves and like, okay, what can that happen? So that's a very important chart. So just to get into a little what we've kind of determined as what we think, what we think are the priorities or the principles for funding projects in Greenfield. Essentially, we want to, advance projects with high/multiple community benefits. If there's something that preserves open space and preserves a historic thing and provides recreation, we're prioritizing those projects over things that just meet one of those needs. Also prioritizing projects that are urgent. If there's something that really meets a need that isn't being met anywhere else, and can be done quickly and urgently, that gets bonus points too. Also maximizing fund leveraging. A lot of projects that are going to be funded with CPA funds are likely not going to be fully funded by the Community Preservation Committee. That's going to be like seed money that they can use to get a match from another state grant. And, the more you can stack funding from different sources, the further our CPA funds go. And then also ensuring that there's going to be some sort of maintenance on the projects that we're funding. So something doesn't just get built and then, never maintained and falls apart. And, we want the funds to fund things that are useful to the public, that the public wants, and that will continue to be used going forward. These are guiding principles. Okay, so these are project priorities. That was guiding principles. So essentially we've, our plan is fiscal year 2023 to 2028, and we've come up with project priorities that we feel are what are priorities for Greenfield. And a lot of this came from researching reports and plans that already exist in the city, and sort of pulling from all these different sources, and then also, just based on our own knowledge of what the city needs. So top of the list is creation of further housing opportunities in Greenfield. And specifically that would be affordable housing, because we can only fund affordable housing projects. Further climate resilience and or improve physical access to or quality of the city's current open space. Actively preserve and enhance cultural, architectural, and environmental heritage of our community. That's a really broad one. We'll get into more details later. And increase access to outdoor public recreation opportunities, obviously. So then from now on, the presentation kind of goes through each of the different areas and sort of what we've focused in on as like, what are the most important aspects of each of these. So first up is open space here. Preserve, protect, and enhance Greenfield's open spaces, obviously. But then we kind of have some examples of projects or ideas that we feel are most needed or most relevant, like protecting and preserving agricultural lands, expanding trail systems, acquiring environmentally sensitive areas, acquiring land in environmental justice areas to increase accessibility to open space opportunities, expanding community gardens, removing invasive trees and invasive plant species. Also in open space, we're hoping to provide and improve connections and maximize access to open spaces for all residents. And then here are some examples, developing the Riverside Bikeway that has been planned for many years, creating community gardens, like I said, improving ADA accessibility to open spaces. And then lastly, prioritizing climate resiliency to support Greenfield's, our people, natural resources, and infrastructure. So planting native trees, wildlife migration corridors, pollinator corridors, floodplain, all those things that that would really help through open space. And just again, these aren't projects that the Community Preservation Committee is going to do. These are the types of projects that we're hoping other people propose to us, and then we will give them funding to do. These are just like examples. So next is historic preservation. These are the priorities for that, like updating the historic inventory and developing a preservation plan, preserving and protecting Greenfield's historic buildings, facades, and landscapes. Again, supporting historic preservation projects that serve multiple public purposes. That one's just emphasizing that, there can be areas where there can be historic preservation and recreation and open space, things that support multiple uses like that. And that kind of gets to the next one, partnering with outdoor recreation, and fostering the renewal of existing industrial buildings for new uses. An example there is Wells Tool Company and factory buildings on Hope Street. So outdoor recreation, and again, I'll just to remind everyone, outdoor recreation and open space are put together in one of those 10% funds. That's just the way the Community Preservation Act deals with the funding. But outdoor recreation has its own, set of categories for what can and can't be done with the money that's separate from open space. So that's why outdoor recreation is kind of separated from open space. So, overall, a lot of them are kind of similar to open space, though. Enhancing, maintaining, and expanding recreation facilities, urban green spaces, open spaces. Community gardens, I think that's the third time that's in this presentation. we really like community gardens, I guess. Creating more river access, safe swimming areas, expanding trail systems, bikeway again, removing invasive species, having more shade and beauty at public parks and playgrounds, improving and increasing access for Greenfield residents to public open spaces and recreational facilities, more signage, boats again here, more public restrooms. These are all ideas that could come from the outdoor recreation fund.
I just want to chime in, if I
Sure.
could, Travis, for a
Go
second.
for it.
One of the things that these funds are not to do is to supplant monies that are already existing either in municipal budgets or nonprofit budgets. So if nonprofits were doing trees, and I just picked trees, and they had $10,000 for trees, the next year they didn't appropriate any money for trees because they wanted CPC money. It's not to supplant any money, it's to augment and create new things and allow perhaps even neighborhood groups that wouldn't normally have an opportunity to bring a small project forward for bettering the neighborhood or fixing up a park or creating a little green space area. It's to do that, really to try to tie in, I think, to the creative juices of all the citizens and not necessarily always established groups. Is that fair, Travis?
Yeah, and also like specifically, it can't replace funding for like municipal,
Right.
like we can't be funding DPW to empty trash cans at parks. That's like regular maintenance stuff that we wouldn't be allowed to do. But if there was like a project to completely overhaul a park, and it's like a massive amount of funding that the city doesn't normally use for regular maintenance, that would qualify.
Right. And not to beat this, but so the city had in their capital plan to completely do over the playground equipment in one of the parks, not renovate, but replace everything. CPC money could be a piece of that, part of their capital planning, but it couldn't be the sole or the primary provider of that money. But it is an area where they could come and make a presentation for a piece of it.
Yep. Yeah, thanks. So the next, as you've seen on the screen here, is housing. Obviously, we want to promote affordable, safe, and energy efficient rental opportunities. This can be done in a lot of different ways, rehabilitating vacant structures, renovating upper stories downtown, converting homes to more units, new apartment buildings, subsidizing the inclusion of affordable units and rental developments. And again, these are all projects that someone else would be doing, and we would give them money to do it. I think that's one of the big misconceptions, is that we're not actually creating any projects, or we're not creating housing. We'll be giving money to other people who hopefully will want to do that. And then again at the bottom here, increasing options for first-time and first-generation home buyers. Establishing down payment, closing costs, purchase price, buy down, or mortgage subsidy assistance programs. This money can also be used for rental assistance programs. We had a discussion about that in one of our meetings, and we weren't exactly sure whether it could or not. And we found that it can be used for rental assistance programs. So there are a lot of different ways that these funds can be used. This a really important one: supporting upgrades, renovations, and preservation of existing affordable housing stock, including working to make more units accessible, ADA accessible. Also improving and increasing access to public open space and recreational facilities near new and existing residential areas. That's another one of those where, if there was a new development, it could include, say it was like a 5-acre parcel, and like 1 acre of it was housing and 4 acres was like permanently preserved as open space. That would be, we could give money out of the open space and the housing funds, and get 2 uses out of that. Tom, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add about housing, since I know that's your specialty.
No, this covers it pretty well. There are times where in any of the areas of the allowable expenditures for CPA funds, the town and I'm not sure in a city council form how that works, because I've only worked in the town form with a town meeting. You can extend out beyond the amount that's authorized here by doing some bonding. And if for some reason the city voters decided they didn't want to do CPA anymore and they rescinded the authorization, the commitments on any bonded or long-term project would continue until those were satisfied.
Yeah, even the CPC, we haven't talked too much about bonding, and it gets
Right.
really complicated. But
Yeah, it
that
does.
is-
But it is done. It can be done.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so this is one of the things we've been working on is developing the process for approving projects and the timeline. The CPA really makes it up to each town and city to decide how they want to do it. And this is sort of what we've come up with. It's based on what a lot of other cities and towns do. In August. So this is, August would be right after the beginning of the fiscal year. The funds would be available. And then we have like a two-step application process where a project, anyone who's interested in a project can submit a pre-application due by September 30th. And that's just like a short one-page, basically tell us what your project is and, how it would work. And then that gives us a chance to, go back to that table and say, okay, does this fit into one of the yeses or is it a no? And, if there's anything that seems like it might be lacking, maybe, work with, as it says, September to October, meets with applicants, discussing their pre-application, try to get the best project out of it that they can get. And then November 31st is when full applications will be due. And then basically after that, we'll be reviewing the applications, meeting with the applicants for any, clarifications we need, or, maybe getting public feedback, public comments at meetings, things like that, and try to decide, which projects we think should be funded. Another thing that we've done is created like a scoring sheet so we can go through and, for example, if a project meets more than one of the categories, it's going to score higher in that section of the scoring sheet. So we can, have a way to score all these projects too. So then once we reach a decision, I guess technically it's not a decision until we vote, but once we're pretty much there, we vote on project recommendations and submit them to city council. And then city council has to consider the projects, and city council has to approve them. And my understanding is that typically city councils, I don't think too many of them get rejected at that point, because the CPC is the one who's put in all the time reviewing them and coming up with the recommendation. But that is in the city councils, that is something they could do. And then, notification awards go out, finalize the agreements, and then we start the whole process over again for the next year.
Oh,
so that will be, this is the part that we haven't done yet. We've been meeting and basically just coming up with the plan, coming up with this process. The exciting stuff with projects is going to start, starting in October, or not October, but August, after our public hearing, which will be on July 28th. So if anyone wants to come to that and give us some public comments or email us public comments, can do that. And our following meeting, we're going to incorporate, public comments into the draft of our plan, finalize the plan, and then be open for business, I guess.
Travis and Thomas, thank you so much. And Travis, if you could unshare, then I could call on people.
There we go. I was trying to figure out where the button was.
Very much. Boy, you guys have a broad mandate, so thank you for your service working on this. I have I'll call myself first and have a comment and then a question, and then I'll call on other folks. The comment is that you and the two of you may or may not be aware that passage of well, you probably were, because you reviewed a lot of plans. the passage of the CPA was a priority within the master plan that we're working on,
Right.
implementing. So we were, I would say, relieved and delighted when it did pass. And the question is, you mentioned that at some point the city could increase beyond the 1%. Would that be another public vote? What would be the
It would
mechanism
have
for
to
that?
be a ballot initiative, or, yeah, that would have to be by the city voters would have to approve that.
That's what I was guessing. Great, thank you. Yes, Phil and then Carol.
I was just gonna say, I think it maxes out at 3%, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, since I have the floor, let's fix Highland Pond, which is now totally covered with green and needed dredging 10 years ago, but I don't know if that's possible. And B, river access and bike trails, I'm all for. All right, that's all I have to say.
Just check the timetable for when you need your application, Phil.
Yeah. I guess I just want to use that the Highland Pond thing as an example of something we've talked about, which is trying to get make sure people have done like their due diligence and
Right.
talking to other. So like, as I said, I'm also the chair of the Conservation Commission. So
Right.
if somebody wanted to do a project like that, it would probably be helpful for their application if they had like a letter of support from the Conservation Commission or something like that. Just an example for
Right.
how that could work.
Hannah, you had your hand up.
I think I was after Carol though.
I think Carol was just talking
I
about
was
the
just gonna say
3%.
3% too.
Yeah.
Oh.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. I have so many questions. Thank you both so much. This is fantastic. I really appreciate the deep dive because this is something that I'm aware of in a couple different towns, but this was much more informative. So 2 really quick questions. The first is I was wondering if there's money that's not used. I mean, ideally, and I imagine people will kind of rush at the opportunity to apply for things. But hypothetically, if you didn't have enough applications or those applications didn't add up to the total you had to allocate, what happens to the additional funds? Do we lose them? Do they? No. Okay.
They just roll over.
It would roll over into the reserve.
Oh, okay. Great to know. Thank you. See, I'm a slow note taker. The other quick question is so, and anyone can apply with the project, is that right?
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about how this is like sort of a unique opportunity for small projects to get funded that might not otherwise have, if someone has a piece of land, especially in an environmental justice area where they wanted to build a community garden and it would cost them $2,000 to do it or something, like that could easily be funded through these funds. So really anybody, and that's sort of the good thing about the pre-application process is that you don't have, there's not this pressure that you have to like get your application perfect from the start. Like you can kind of come to us and say, hey, I have this idea for this, through the pre-application. And then we can kind of, walk people through like, well, if you do it this way, like then it actually meets one of the categories or, can kind of help.
Nice.
Help with that.
And so, thank you. And so kind of to that question, and this might be to sort of SGIC committee members as well, and this is just for my own ignorance, for committees like ours that we talk a lot about, the direction and responsibility of SGIC around the master plan, making sure it's being used, making sure it's being connected with. I mean, are we as a committee able to suggest to people that they apply for this? Like if the public comes to us with ideas, can we be sort of a facilitator of people knowing that this is available and encouraging them? And I don't know about helping them. We're all busy people, but I just wonder if that's part of the role. I don't know, our role?
I mean,
Is
I guess that might be a question for you, but I think we
I
would
don't
be
know.
happy to have you, happy to have you
Okay, so
recommend
that's
people to
allowed.
conference.
I keep running into things that are like weird rules that
I mean,
really
as far
out, and then I get in trouble. So I
yeah,
have to
as far
check.
as I know, that's allowed.
Okay. Oh, interesting. I'm like the CPT mom.
Let me go. You done with that, Hannah? So let me go to
Yes.
Carol and then Phil. Thanks, and come back to you for more of your questions if you want. Carol.
So thank you. For me also, it's so great to get all this detail, and I've been, like George said, since before the master plan, but it's so great to see this come to fruition, and that you've done so much work already to lay a really strong foundation. And I think it's a lot to begin with, but this is such a great asset to the community. And I guess one is a question and one is a comment, and then that includes a confession that I know I've received emails as a department head to provide information. I've just not had the time. But as you've been talking, it's spurred some things that not necessarily municipal based, but project based, that I think address these points that would be kind of enhancing programs, which seems like it fits the bill. Could that be something that a municipal employee could submit, like kind of a planned project that wouldn't supplant any funding because there is none, but just like a fabulous idea that could be, I know that part of it is having someone to manage it or operate it. So again, that would probably be outside the city. It would be volunteer based, or so you're nodding. I'm taking that as a run with it kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Tom can speak up too, but I think in our application process, we even have a section for like, if this is a municipal project, there's like a checklist, like, have you checked for funding from this source? Have you checked for funding from this?
Right.
Basically trying to make sure that,
right.
That we're using the funds that need to be used before, so it's not supplanting any. But I don't know if Tom has any.
No, that's exactly right. You'd have to go to council, I think, or your department head or whoever, to see if there's money within the budget. Go to council to see if it's something they'd be willing to do. If they say it's a great project, but we can't fund it, at that point, I think we're kind of the funder of last resorts for the municipality.
Right.
The idea is to try to get it out into the community and there are ways to partner on capital items, as I said. There may be 5 or 6 different funding sources within your capital plan. Some in community preservation can be a part of that. But generally, my opinion, we would be a funder of last resort for municipal
projects. Right. Exactly. Now that's exactly what I was kind of thinking, but it's just like again, a way to kind of stretch what the city can do by partnering with other groups and interested active citizens who want to do things. So my other question is I know that the community preservation website that the state or whoever is set up is fabulous. Do you know if there's a list of projects? Because I know so many communities have it and it's been around for 20 plus years. I mean, for me, it helps to see what other projects have been funded. Do you know if that exists?
Yeah, they have some examples of projects on their website, Travis. I'm sorry. And I'm only going to talk about, because I work there. I go to the town of Bourne and see what they did there, because they've had it for a long time. They've got a lot of money. Okay. They were a 3%er early on. Their property values have increased substantially. So it's not apples to apples, but you can see a lot of the older projects that they've done, especially in historic preservation.
Yep, and I just shared a link to the community. Yeah, so they have a whole database. I'm pretty sure it's like every project that's ever been funded.
Wow.
And
They have great records. That's awesome. That I wish more things were like that. And then I guess maybe.
Oh, can I just add one thing to your previous question? I was thinking that I think one way that community preservation funds can help municipalities is to be like the seed money for a matching grant from the state, or
Right.
that sort of thing can be a good use of CPA to like leverage it to more money for the city.
Thank you. Phil, I wanted to go to you, then I want to check with Nancy or Tracy if they have questions, and I had one myself, but I want to defer to them. Phil, you had a question?
Following up on Hannah's question, we might consider the SGIC, since the goals of the CPA and the SGIC are parallel, having a meeting where we invite ideas, invite people to make suggestions, and we could anyway, it's in advance of the public meeting to sort of prime the pump, but that's open for discussion.
And I'll just point out with that, the two meetings of the two committees overlap. That's why we was challenging, if we were on one of your usual meeting days to try to meet. So that might make it even easier scheduling wise.
Yeah, and if I could add to that,
please.
We're actually required to do at least one public hearing per year. So going forward, we will continually be doing public hearings and basically getting input from the public on how we're doing, and if they think we're meeting funding the right kinds of projects and things like that. So it wouldn't have to necessarily be that same meeting, but just wanted to throw that out there, that we will be having more public hearings going forward for public feedback.
Tracy or Nancy?
It's just such a broad, there are just so many ideas that are going like through my head. And it would be really hard to decide what's best. I'm sure I know you have a formula and all, but I'm just sitting here thinking about two things that popped into my head immediately. I feel like my backyard is a wildlife corridor. I live in Burnham Heights, the north end of town, and there's undeveloped areas near us, and we butt up right up to Route 2. What happens to the bear that wanders through my backyard and climbs over the fence to my neighbor's yard, and then he runs into Route 2? Where does that bear go? Has anyone ever talked about putting up wildlife cams or having some way of monitoring where all these, because we've got skunks, we've got possums, we've got raccoons, and all the resident rodents like everybody else does. Is there any way to monitor, or has anybody thought about monitoring? I'm not in a position to do that. I have lots of ideas, but I'm not in a position to do any of these things. Yeah. So what do we do with all these? Everybody can come up with ideas, but how do you make these things happen?
Well, that's where you put it on the pre-app for an idea, as an idea, and hopefully the committee can help flush it out as to resources or places you may want to go to try to develop it more. Mm-hmm. I think that's part of the job of the committee. And Travis, I jumped in on you again. I'm sorry. The only other thing I wanted to tell you is that bear found a friend and ended up in my backyard up in Vernon the other night. So we call him Munchie. He's a regular now.
Yeah. There are a lot of bears. I was surprised how much wildlife there is here in our little community. It's crazy.
And I was just going to add that I was trying to think like what that would fit under for community preservation, and like open space would probably be the closest thing, but we can only fund acquiring, creating, or preserving open space. So if there was like land to purchase to preserve for bears, that could be funded through open space.
Right. What about like a safe crossing? Some way they can cross Route 2. Do bears even get hit on Route 2? I don't know, because I don't know where they go.
Yes.
Is there a way they could cross Route 2, a tunnel or a bridge? That kind of thing. I know they do that sort of thing for salamanders and turtles, but I don't know. I don't even know if it's an issue.
In Florida, they did it for alligators. Yeah,
I wonder where they go, because they go through my yard and continue on, and I don't know where they go.
Interesting. Food for thought.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if that would fit under like a community preservation thing, but like like Tom said, you can always fill out a pre-app and
Right.
if we could think of
That could be
something, but
pre-development. There could be research on pre-development for protecting open space.
yeah,
Okay.
it would just have to be like protecting. There has to be, the land has to get protected indefinitely, in perpetuity after
Right.
a project. So, but you could also talk to the Conservation Commission.
Right,
Put on my
right.
other hat here.
Yeah.
Conservation
Nancy,
Commission.
while we still have a few more minutes, did you have something? You're muted, Nancy.
Okay, here we go. Sorry. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Thank you. You have done a huge amount of work. I mean, I'm really impressed. And I learned a lot about, I can also think of a lot of sort of open space kinds of projects, but I know that what the city really needs is housing. And that's really expensive. And so anyway, that's, I guess, where my priorities are, although my heart might be elsewhere at times.
Hmm.
So, but thank you so much. I look forward to being in your meetings and stuff and see what the rest of the community has to say.
Well, I'll just add, that's why there's 10% that has to go towards open
Right.
space and recreation. So there will be some open space and recreation projects funded, even if we used our entire reserve towards housing, something would get funded. And I just want to add that with our public hearing coming up on the 28th, our report, our plan and applications, pre-applications, all those documents are going to be on our city webpage. So when the notice goes out 2 weeks before the hearing, you should be able to find all those materials on our webpage.
Thanks. I'll ask a quick one, and I was thinking of the whole idea of leveraging, and there's one pet project I've had in my mind, which is pretty involved. But I'm a cyclist, and just today I took a ride down south, and I came to Old Deerfield, and my last 3 miles is on 510 there, which is not got much of a shoulder in some places. I'm fine with it. I've done it many hundreds of times, and I'm a seasoned cyclist. But for families, I mean, going from Greenfield on bike to Old Deerfield, it would be a wonderful trip. There's some wonderful roads beyond there as well that are safe and low traffic. And, the idea of having some connection. I mean, I've gone down those farm roads as far as you can from Old Deerfield going north and trying to, envision something like that. And my question is less about that specifically, but could the CPA money funds used to work with another town for a collaborative project? Maybe they're using their CPA. And I see Thomas nodding vigorously.
Yeah, we worked with the town of Plymouth to open up walking trails that started in Bourne and went all the way up to Kingston. So on vacants, and we also put money toward. It was a match. It wasn't the seed money, to other funding to create bike paths that they're trying to do. Problem with getting down to Deerfield though, it's all Route 5, so it's state highway.
Thank you. And a last question from me real quick is the hearing on the 28th, is that going to be hybrid? I assume it's in public, or?
It's going to be at John's On.
But it won't be, can people participate virtually, or?
I don't think we're going to have that capability at John's On, yeah.
But the city council does have it.
Okay.
All the writing is reversed. It's still a work in progress, and you can't hear anybody. but by the 28th, they might have that fixed. We're close.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was,
Thanks, Bill.
That was tough at the last council meeting I was at, because there were counselors trying to get in and you couldn't hear them. So
Yeah. So I'll turn it back to Hannah for if you had any last question, and also you can do our committee's official thank you to our guests.
Oh, sure. I have a couple really quick questions. I was wondering what time the hearing is on the 28th.
All right.
We haven't put out the public notice yet.
Oh, okay.
But, I think we said
11 o'clock, I would think, wouldn't you, Travis, for a public hearing?
Sorry, what did you say?
Probably 7 o'clock.
I don't know. I wasn't sure if it was the same time, if we were
I can-
thinking this same time as our.
I don't know.
mean-
That'll have to be determined at the next.
Yeah,
meeting.
you'll see
All
when
right.
you'll see when it
Oh,
comes to
no
that.
rush.
We have one
No
meeting before
rush.
then, so we'll.
No rush. Well, thank you so much. This really was so informative, and I'm a little blown away at some of the Venn diagram that's forming in my head about our committee and yours. It really is. I feel like it was really good timing to hear from you both today. So thank you so much.
Yes.
I just want to add one more thing that would probably be helpful for everyone here, since you're based on a plan, is that the funding can be used for like a planning process or a design process too. It doesn't have to be like an actual structure being built. It can be funding research into how to build a, bike network or whatever.
That's amazing to know.
Yeah, that's helpful.
That's also so rare. So it's really wonderful that that is true. It's so hard to find grants and things for planning processes. Amazing.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Of course, you're both welcome to, as members of the public, you're both welcome to stay around if you wish. And thank you so much. So the next item is updates related to the master plan. We're a little behind time because we had a slow beginning. So I just wanted to suggest that we only, not everyone has to share something. This has been, Travis, something that we've done as kind of a routine, kind of it keeps our mind percolating, watching for things related to the master plan we might notice. So not everyone has to do it on the committee, but I'll pass just to preserve time. Didn't have anything in particular. And we want to share anything. I think Nancy, you had noticed in email that you had some things you wanted to mention, or?
I actually thought it was a different topic because Jonah had asked for us to have a conversation about sort of the overview of the master plan and progress. And I had sent a bunch of of documentation to him. He's not here, and so, but it sounds like that's not what you were looking for. So, I'm good.
Okay.
And I have nothing in particular to say.
Any other committee members have things that they have noticed or have inspired them? Yes, Phil, and then Hannah.
It's not very inspiring, but the city council, you may have noticed, has been wrestling with the problem of the issue of outdoor marijuana cultivation. And it's an interesting balancing act because the town, this is an agricultural town, and you want to be friendly to growers. But the city council, we had allowed 5,000 square feet, and then the farmers said they couldn't make money. So then we allowed 100,000 square feet. And it was like we opened the store and they drove a truck through and they wanted to build 300,000 square feet of marijuana grow in a residential neighborhood. So I think I've been sort of leading the work to reduce it back to 5,000 square feet. Seemed like the simplest way to assuage the neighbors. But, it's sort of a balancing of public interest, and, there was money to be made for the town, but not that much. And it had really angered a lot of people who put a lot of money in their homes. So I don't know, the master plan encourages farming, but I felt like anyway, so I spent a lot of time doing that.
Hannah, I'll jump the queue for a second because I have something related to that. And I'll just mention one tricky thing about this is outdoor marijuana cultivation is not categorized as agriculture. So that's a little tricky as far as how things are.
I know, but the state has said that it doesn't matter, they're still allowing it.
Gotcha. And I'll just say that my bike ride this morning, the planning board is committed to doing a lot of research on various aspects of and parameters for outdoor cultivation. And one thing we're planning to do, all the planning board members are planning to do, is check out the outdoor cultivation site at 7 River Road in Whately, and that's where I biked down this morning to go check that out. So, did
it look like a prison?
I wasn't able to get too close. They had a no trespassing sign and a sign under it said, "Smile, you're on camera." So I'll save my further reflections for planning board meetings, but I don't want to take up too much time. Hannah, you had your hand, and then Nancy.
Yeah, I just had a quick thing that, George, your comment about the biking made me think of, which is that the Franklin County Chamber has a new incoming director named Jessie Dean. I don't know if people are familiar with her. She is phenomenal. She's young. She's very energetic. She and her husband co-own F45, which is a fitness studio. They have 2 locations, one in Hadley, one in West Springfield. She's a mom. She's very active. All that to say that since the chamber is now in Old Deerfield, I feel like she would be very interested in the accessibility of the chamber and Old Deerfield. And as a fitness guru and mom and new head of the chamber, would probably love to talk about bike stuff. So
Interesting.
I don't know. It made me think about that. And I think she'd be a great guest speaker down the road when she's been in the position for a minute and settled in.
What's her name again, Hannah?
It's Jessie, Jessye, Dean, Deane. And she's a friend and colleague too from my work in Amherst. So happy to introduce her to anyone who would like to know her.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Nancy.
Yeah, I was just thinking about updates, and I believe that the whole Fisk Avenue piece has finally been completed in the last month. So the parking is now in place. The grass has been put down in the middle of it, and it looks fabulous.
That was the thing I was going to comment on too. Oh, go ahead, Nancy. Sorry, I meant to cut you off.
Thank you, Carol, who worked so hard on it, and everybody else who worked on it. And there were a lot of different pieces, and the DPW that all finally came together. Years of work and planning.
And I was noticing that too, biking through downtown, and I saw that in the middle of the grassy area are 2 trees, and I remember the conversation between Mary Chacon and Marlo about having the trees there, and back and forth about that. So I was delighted to see it worked out to have the trees put in there. So yeah, long time coming, but great going back to that design from the school many years ago. So
10 years.
Yeah, that's great. Carol, I didn't know if I know can't see you right now, but I just wanted to see before we go off this topic, if you had anything you wanted to share, or Tracy.
I'm on my phone now, so I'm just gonna the video thing is too weird. So
okay.
I think I'd love to share about the new potential member for the student representative position for the SGIC. And is that okay, George, or?
Sure.
All right, don't.
Unless Hannah tells me I'm doing a bad job. Sure, go for it.
Well, I know we've always struggled to get the student representative since that's become part of the ordinance, and I had some conversations with the new food services director, which is a position that I am very passionate about having. There's a lot of great that can come out of having the right person in that position. I think we do have the right person in that position. She's wonderful, and she has in my talkings with her, because she's working on a food truck that we're working on making all electric, because it's really hard to do and I love hard things to do, but she's just doing fabulous things that really touch on, I think, things that are just important in general, but also back to the master plan about bringing local food into schools and composting back in and getting kids to garden, doing meals out in the community, and really just kind of next level thinking of how to make our whole community better. And so I did tap her to see if she was interested, and she already submitted her information, and she's on the agenda for the July City Council meeting.
Oh,
Phil, just to let you know. So hopefully she'll be
a student.
No, she's actually the new food services director for the schools. But I went back to the ordinance, and the wording fits. She's a representative of a student organization. I don't know how it's worded exactly,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's there. And I
Cool.
think she's just fabulous. She just did a kickoff summer, what do they call it? Food something. It was fabulous. It was in the paper. And we just need more of,
Nice.
in my opinion, more of this stuff.
And Hannah, you had a comment related to this, it looked like?
Well, I
Yeah.
just wanted to ask a quick question. That is all super exciting. But I did want to just bring up Mary Chacon, who you mentioned a minute ago, George, because she did email us again. And I believe it was MJ had said that when she talked to the mayor's office, they told her that there were just like so many applications and they were trying to get through them. But do we know, does anyone know why Mary's application maybe isn't moving?
I would just say, I mean, my experience with mayoral appointments is there's a
Just
big
keep
stack.
contacting.
And I think advocacy, active,
Okay.
be persistent but polite, and
Yeah.
and I recommended to her to contact
Okay.
Caitlin or Danny at the mayor's office and try to understand if it's just just haven't gotten there yet or
Okay.
something like that. I wouldn't presume what the sluggishness implies.
No, I'm not worried about that. I just,
Yeah.
it's a
And
small
and
town, and people are gonna talk. No.
sure. And I think you could always, as chair, I mean, we all want this committee to be fully,
Yeah.
staffed. And so you could always call and just say, oh, I heard, this one is going through because it sounds like the mayor did appoint this person, Carol, you're talking about. So if it's going before the council. So, just you could contact the mayor's office and ask yourself in your role as chair, I would think.
Yeah,
For sure.
I have, but I will again. Yeah.
Okay, great. And now, Hannah, you want to tee us up for July's meeting, priorities and goals.
Oh, yes.
Committee.
So, thank you. So, yeah, Jonah is not here, and this was prompted, as Nancy said, by Jonah saying that it would be very helpful to just get a sense of these, especially as a new member. And so I was thinking that when we come back together in July in person, which we also should probably talk about before we leave tonight, if maybe that would be a good meeting, since we don't yet have a guest speaker, to do sort of more of a deep dive. There's always at least once a meeting, I feel like still someone who knows the history better will say something that is so helpful to me. So I think, I'm sure everybody has a different idea of what that would look like. But I think just talking about priorities, certainly debriefing about tonight and what I feel like we all kind of learned about the CPC and maybe some ways that might fit into our priorities and goals, which feels like sort of a new element. I don't know. I wanted to sort of put it to everybody tonight so that we could think a little bit about what the shape of that would be, so that in an hour and a half, we feel like we have a really effective conversation, a little history, priorities, and then looking ahead a bit.
Well, I think one thing that we've done repeatedly over the years is pause and reflect on, okay, what system are we using? I mean, we have, I mentioned the CPC has a broad mandate. Well, we certainly do as well. We got a big document with a lot of facets. You can't take it all at one time. So we've done various things, as Nancy well knows, about going through chapters and that kind of a thing. And we could, again, reflect on, okay, is there some systematic way we want to approach some of our work and, kind of narrow it down to more prioritized things, a refreshed update about accomplishments, things in the master plan that have been accomplished. And I know also that it had come up about the last meeting we had about, should we be thinking ahead to the next iteration of the master plan? I was looking at the related to that, I was looking at the state, master general law, and I didn't see it specified. I remembered the idea of it's every 10 years or something, but I didn't see that specified in the law. So I'd be interested to know where that came from, because I remember it the same way, but anyway, that's a bit of an aside. But
Carol has a hand up, maybe.
oh,
You have something.
okay, couldn't see it, but yes, Carol.
I think my understanding is that in Massachusetts, the law is that a community has to have a master plan in order to take advantage of certain, I think it might be funding opportunities that Eric would know the specifics. I think it's not a hard and fast rule, because 10 years is, you know, it's not a long period of time considering the comprehensive breadth of this and the goals, but that it's just kind of a standard that you look at a master plan as being a 10-year document. And I do believe we went over that at the beginning of the master planning process. So I would say that's more just a general guideline.
Okay, thanks. So that's some of my thought, Hannah, is just like I say, pause and reflect. How are we, you know, we've done deep dive on each chapter sometimes. You know, is there you know, we've used this system of having speakers that are relevant to components of the master plan come in to help spur that on. We've tried to identify, what's the term we used? Orphan goals in the master plan that don't automatically go into any one department or something like that, and things that, or what is it, Nancy, the term we used? I can't remember. Hannah, do you know? There was some term we used where it was like, you know, things that didn't have a home, I think was the way we put it. And so that we might want to take in a particular initiative about those to try to, you know, push them forward or something like that. So it's kind of broad and vague, but that's my sense of how it's helpful to reflect a little bit and then get down to specifically how do we want to proceed. So Nancy.
Yeah, I agree, George. That's exactly how we've been working. And that's probably the way we will continue to work. But having just seen the CPC presentation, I'm like, wow, wouldn't it be cool if we had a list of priorities in each of the chapter areas? I mean, I don't know. I'm always trying to, you know, get things a little more specific, and it's probably useless. I mean, I think I've been convinced it's useless. But on the other hand, if you know, if each, well, maybe not each person, but if each chapter had someone who says, "Oh, I want to think about that chapter, and I'm going to bring forward what I think, you know, hasn't been done or that would be high priorities,"
Right.
Then we'd have something specific to start with, and having looked at. And there are a lot of people, obviously, in this group that weren't involved in writing the master plan, so they may not be as familiar with the chapters as people like you, George, who also have an amazing memory. I don't have that memory, so maybe that's why I keep looking at it.
I saw Carol and then Phil.
Thank you. I mean, along the lines of what Nancy was just saying, I was thinking we, good Lord, have gone through the master plan so many different ways. There are huge lists, but I was thinking it might be a good idea, I guess, to talk about, but just really teasing out. I was thinking like short-term important goals that I mean, I guess along the lines of what you said too, George, that just really don't have ownership, that could be a good fit for the CPA, that we could recommend toward that, to kind of, because I do think that it's great what they're doing, but there's that sweet spot of like, oh, we have 25,000 for this. Trying to find something that fits that hole might be not that easy to accomplish, even though, so I was just thinking that we already have all of this information, that it might be a great opportunity to kind of pull out maybe our top 10 or top 15
Right.
to submit, and then for them too, it might make it a little easier because some of that legwork's already done.
And just to dovetail with that, Carol, before going to Phil, that in the implementation section of the master plan, it does break things down as far as cost And as far
Cost
as
and
length
time.
of time, yep.
Yep.
Phil.
Well, getting back to the original purpose, which was to orient the new members to what the committee's about and what we're supposed to be doing. Chapter by chapter seems a little too slow. I think what would be useful for me as a relatively new member is sort of a backgrounder in how we got here. How was it produced? What was the purpose? And I love top 10 lists. I don't know how we produced that, but I like that idea. Anyway, that's what I have to add.
Tracy.
I'd be interested in what's currently in process and what's up next, and just focus on that, because everything is so broad. I can't my head can't hold it. It's too much.
And I think there is, to your point, Phil, I think there is, I think there's a fair amount in the master plan itself about how it came to pass, so to speak. So I guess that would be the question of, do we want to, put our limited time into rehashing that? Because there's narrative stuff in the plan about that. And Tracy, you're talking about something a little more focused as far as, what's going on now that we can, be aware of, and maybe see if there's anything we want to do to learn more about it or to facilitate it moving forward, or that kind of thing. Carol.
I'm sorry, I was just going to add back to Phil's point, and maybe even Tracy's, that I worked on the master plan, and I am the first to admit I have not read it cover to cover. I know George and Nancy have it covered. They probably could recite it, but what I do love about it is, yes, I'm all about, wise use of limited time, and there is the executive summary, which is great to read. I was just going to offer up, if people, it is daunting. And as George mentioned, those tables are at the back, the implementation tables, there's matrices, and there's a lot of way to kind of squeeze out the pertinent information without having to try to retain everything that's in there. So the beginnings and the ends of like each chapter are where the goods are at. And maybe we could even go over that, like just really, because I know we did that in the past, but we do have enough new people to try to, it's like the Cliff's Notes of our master plan.
Nancy.
Yeah, I agree that the most important thing is to identify what hasn't been done and what we want to get done. So if we're like getting to that top 10 list in whatever methodology is employed. I'm also curious, I know the answer is probably no, but whether it's possible to have a hybrid meeting. Because I will be out of town.
Gotcha. Some top 10 lists start at 10 and some start at 1, so we'd have to decide about that. But just a reminder that as far as having the in-person meetings, there is that. I think I sent out to everybody those guidelines, and geographic distance is one of those categories. And if anyone's in the military, that's another one. So, Hannah, you were going to speak, I think.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think even talking about and taking a look in July at some of the ideas that we've had along the way of different directions that we were going in, because I feel like COVID sort of interrupted a process for us of really being like, this is what we're going to do over the next 2 years or what have you, and really dive deep. We had just hosted a great in-person thing. Is that something we want to circle back to do? The CPC idea, I think, is a great new idea. Is that something that we want to do? Is there a hybridization of, sort of priorities and goals around achieving some of these things? I would love that to come out of July a little bit, and I'm happy to lead at least part of that meeting. Maybe it's the last part or something, and drilling down. We could do like some history. That would not be led by me. And then, in the middle, I also think I would love to hear from everyone on the committee why you're on the committee. I always find that really helpful when I join something, because everybody has different things about something that they are like really there for. And that has helped me along the way, hearing from everyone on this committee who, you know, we just all have different priorities within ourselves, biking, trees, you know, the whole environment, road. It's just everybody's got their thing. So that I think would be helpful as well.
So knowing we're short on time, I wonder if Hannah, you can work out some kind of kind of framing of this or organizing of this, and get it out to us a bit in advance of the meeting, so that people, you know, like why join the committee or something like that, you know, and people could volunteer for take little chunks or something like that. So we'll have some planning, you know, thinking ahead to go into that would be my suggestion. The other thing I'll point out is that that's the same day as the CPC public hearing, the 28th.
Oh, exactly.
They didn't have the time set, but I'd keep alert to what if they say they're going to start at 6. Do we want to cut our meeting short or something like that? So I just wanted to throw that out there. So in case we want to be part of that meeting, just want to mention that.
Okay.
So we have just 3 minutes left by my clock, and wanted to have a little time for announcements. And Phil, I know you had an announcement, pre-meeting announcement you were going to repeat.
Oh, yeah, I apologize, but once again, the Apple earnings call is at the same time as and this is what I do for a living. It's the 4 most important days of my working life. So I'm not going to be there next meeting, and this is going to happen probably 4 times a year. And if you want to have someone else as a city council rep or a city council backup, you let me know and I can see if I can get someone interested.
It's interesting about the idea of a backup instead of just someone replacing you. That's an interesting idea to me, because like you say, it's a third of the meetings for the year, and boy, it's always good to have members of the city council tuned into the master plan.
I'd be happy to scout around, and there's a couple of people who come immediately to mind who'd be great fits. You know, they have too many meetings as it is, but this is a fun meeting. So maybe they'd
We
like
also lose you, Phil, as our secretary.
Yeah, well, we'll see how my notes read this time.
That's why he scheduled those Apple meetings at that time.
All right, so that was my pre-announcement.
Is that I'm just saying, I think the idea of a you know, fill in a backup from the council is good. I don't know if that
I'll
sounds
try to
good.
make it happen.
Well, I'm wondering if it sounds good to the rest of the committee. Or if there's any objection to that idea, or if, you know, the council can do that, I guess, but that'd be great.
Okay.
Unless there's objection.
We would have to find a secretary, someone to take.
They'd have to be the secretary too?
No, we'd have to find someone to take notes, you'd say.
We would
Yep.
have to find
And
that.
Hannah will figure that out, I guess. No,
Yeah.
you'll
I'll do-
delegate.
yeah.
And
Carol, yeah.
I can't see you, Carol, but go for it.
No, I was just going to say I love the idea about I would hate to lose Phil, and the note-taking part of that is just an added bonus. But I'm thinking that if we had a backup, then we are getting our information to 2 counselors. So
Right.
I think it might be a smart move if we can manage it.
Any other literally last-minute announcements? Tracy?
I don't know if it's an announcement or not, but I don't know if I'll be here next month.
Sure.
We've been trying, my husband and I have been trying since last December to, I'm doing kidney donation to him.
Oh, wow.
And it was
Wow.
supposed to happen in December, and then it was supposed to happen in June, and now maybe it will happen next month, but I don't know. And once that happens, it's a 4 to 6 week recovery. So I will have to let you know, because we're in limbo.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Best wishes.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. That's wow. Yeah, good luck with that. And
Thank you.
yeah. Any
I'm
other last?
I'm just gonna ask again about whether there's any possibility for hybrid meetings.
Oh, sorry.
Because, yeah, I will be out of town for both the the July and the August meeting. And I may have a conflict on the September one. It's like, oh my God.
Oh, no.
Yeah, anyway, so.
So the guidelines about what's required are in those, you know, what I sent out as far as being able to be heard. And we know at the last council meeting, there was a problem with that, with one of the counselors who was participating remotely. couldn't be heard after repeated attempts. So hopefully, as Phil's saying, the capacity at the where are we going to be meeting next? We said in person, but
We have not decided yet.
Okay.
We had not
Okay.
discussed.
so wherever we are, if Hannah, you can work on finding out if that what the hybrid capacity is, because we were told that both the meeting room at the City Hall and John's On should be hybrid ready. So, but you know, it's tricky technology. So,
Thank
Do
you.
we, oh, sorry. Do we have any obligation to meet anywhere? Do we have to meet in town hall, or is it just sort of up to us?
do you mean could we meet at the John's On?
John's On or outside somewhere? Do we have to be kind of in a certain location?
Well,
Not
meeting outside.
I know what I know, not this time because of hybridization, but
Sure. I'm assuming it's somewhat. We're not obliged. We just need to
okay.
negotiate because I know again the CPC meets at that same time. I don't know where they meet, but I'm assuming they're at the John's On. But
He said that, yeah, he said it's at the John's On.
well, that's where their event is going to be. I don't know if their regular meetings are there.
Regularly.
So,
Got it.
and if their event is happening after us, we'd already be there for the public hearing. So, if you could just check with, I guess, the mayor's office or
Is that
or I don't know, Carol, if you know how that gets negotiated about where meetings are set up.
In the past, it's always been wherever you could find space, but typically you would want a consistent location. But as long as it's listed,
Yep.
48 hours in advance with
Okay.
the public notice, I think it can happen anywhere in the city. As far as John's On, I believe because of the programming there, no meetings can start before 4:30 because it's being used but that shouldn't be a problem.
Right.
Usually there's like 15 minutes setup.
And
But,
and do you know who you find out who would hand to go to determine?
I think that's the hot potato still, isn't it? But I would
Oh,
try
no.
Caitlin.
Okay.
I know
Caitlin,
there was
okay.
supposed to be someone who scheduled it. I don't know how that. I mean, we don't meet in person very often, so I would ask Caitlin.
Okay.
I know for the fire station, we're starting to have meetings there,
Okay.
or that's the plan.
Yeah, I mean that's the difficulty with meetings that are occurring at the same time. But I would vote for the John's On if we're available. I think over City Hall, that would be my preference.
Same.
Oh, and sorry, the fire station does conflict with this meeting, so I think it would also be on the 28th. But anyway, we'll stick a pin in that one for now. Caitlin will know.
I'm
Okay.
also kind of hearing, I know we're 4 minutes over time here. I'm also kind of hearing that our next meeting date might not be ideal. Is that accurate between fire station conflict? No, you're shaking your head. CPC conflict, Nancy's out of town. I don't know.
I'm saying the fire station conflict happens every month. We've been dealing with
Okay.
ongoing.
Okay, ongoing. The timing stuff. All right. Excellent.
Unless you want to propose a different date where.
Well, I don't know. If it feels like we would just get back into the loop of all the dates that never end up working for us. I feel like we have gone back over it a couple times recently. Yeah. Does 5 p.m. still work for everyone?
Yep.
For now until we find out the CPC? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right. All in favor? Yes. Have a good evening, everybody.